You're good to go.
Welcome, everybody. We have a good program scheduled for today, Discovering One's Hidden Jewish Roots. So if Leah could just remove that from the screen now, and we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Kim Scheintel. I'm president of the Jewish Genealogical Society of Southwest Florida. And I thank Jim Haberman for helping us with the Zoom setup. It is being recorded. All attendees are now muted. You can put questions and comments in the chat, and there will be a Q&A following the presentation. However, if you have something to say during the presentation, you can unmute yourself. We would like all of you to join the JGS of Southwest Florida. The dues are $25 for a single membership, $30 for a family, and $50 for a sustaining membership. The applications are on our website, but you're always welcome to attend our programs, even if you're not a member. And I love DNA, okay? And I've learned so many things from having my DNA tested, but after talking to Leah, I'm finding out that some of the people on our panel found out that they were Jewish even without a DNA test. So it's not just about DNA. I could give you so many examples that I have of people that have shared DNA with me who only found out that they were Jewish because of a DNA test, but I'm not going to go into all of my details. I want to hear from you instead. I'd like to call on Howard Finkel, our program chair, to tell us about upcoming programs and to introduce our speaker. Howard?
Thank you, Kim, and welcome everyone to our 2022-23 season. We have a really good season planned and hope you can join us for future programs. Today, we'll talk about today's in a minute and then introduce Leah, but on December the 18th, our next program on December the 18th, Barry Halpern, another member of our society, will talk about publishing your family's history. Barry's got some great anecdotal information and tips on how to do that. On January the 15th of 2023, Adam Brown, who was the administrator of the Avotenu DNA Project, will speak on the genetic origins and migrations of the Jewish people. On February the 19th of 2023, Phil Goldfarb, who is the discussion group moderator for Jewish Gen, will speak on how to effectively utilize the Jewish Gen discussion group. On March the 19th, we'll have a return visit from Gil Bardage, who spoke to us last year on two programs on autosomal DNA. This year, he's going to speak, the title of his program is Using Y DNA and Mitochondrial DNA in Genealogy Research. So you'll definitely want to hear that one if you're into the DNA investigations. On April the 16th, winding up our season, Robin Magid, who is the Assistant Director and member of the Executive Committee of JRI Poland, which is Jewish Records Indexing Poland, will speak, and her program is Finding Your Eastern European Jewish Family on jripoland.org. So again, we're looking forward to a great season and hope you will all be able to join us. Today, our speaker is Leah Cook, a member of our society. Leah is a local Southwest Florida resident, has been doing genealogical research since 2001. Before retiring to Florida, she taught computer science and mathematics at schools and colleges in New England, most recently at Tufts University. She has a BA degree from the University of Wisconsin and a Doctor of Education degree from the University of Massachusetts. She manages the surname database and Facebook page for our society. She is also a member of JGS of Greater Boston. She has made numerous genealogy presentations and publications over the past 20 years. In discovering her family roots, Leah has been blessed with many miracles, often through DNA matches. She loves helping others uncover their roots and solving their genealogical mysteries. Leah, you're on.
Thank you. I left this screen up with the title because if people want a handout, I have put my email address and you would direct your request to me. So I'll give you just a second if you want to take down my email address. I can put this back up at the end. I'm going to take it off now, though. Much better for me too. I grew up in Schenectady, New York, and I was the only Jewish student in my elementary school. All the other children were Christian, and most of them believed that the Jews killed Jesus Christ. Fortunately, we have since found out that the Romans did that, not us, but at the time, people thought that. So I encountered a lot of anti-Semitism in my childhood, and as we all know, anti-Semitism is on the rise again today. I think that anti-Semitism has been the primary reason that people have hidden their Jewish heritage, and whether it was in the Inquisition, in which people left Spain and Portugal, or in the Holocaust, where people just gave up their Judaism to survive, or even in modern times. Recently, hundreds of descendants have found out that they're Jewish, or that they're from Jewish families because of DNA analysis, although other people have found out because they were adopted and they started researching their history, or from family records, or from a parent. I became a genealogist actually after the September 11th event. I felt that New York was hit because it was one of the Jewish centers in the world. And I had been kind of dormant as a Jew for a long time. And I think that that event sort of reawakened my spirit and got me interested in genealogy, got me interested in finding family. And since then, I've become active in Jewish education and Jewish life. In my heart and my soul, I am Jewish, and I am proud to be one of God's children. I just had the funniest thing happen on my screen. I don't know if you did. All of a sudden, I saw all these people in picture frames. I've never seen that before. That was very strange. Okay. Besides having a cousin who found out she was Jewish, which was back in 2004, one of the things that stimulated my interest was going to a presentation at the Jewish Genealogical Society in Tampa Bay. And there was a speaker named Yoel Ben Habib. He was a Cuban who came to America to go to college. He started making friends. And as he started making friends, he started realizing that many of his friends had customs in their home that were similar to his background, although he had grown up Christian in Cuba. And he got curious and of course ended up finding out that he was 100% Sephardic Jewish. He is not with us today because he finished his bachelor's degree and maybe even a master's, but he's in Israel now, and his field is Jewish studies. So he was one person that I met personally. Of course, many of you know Madeleine Albright found out that she was Jewish and eventually embraced Judaism. Alexander Ocasio-Cortez has Jewish ancestry. Recently, it has been learned that there is a crypto Jewish community in New Mexico. There's a group in Israel called B'nai Anoism, and it stands for help to the forcibly converted, which is for Sephardic Jews. And of course, we know that we have people in Greece, France, Russia, Hungary, Israel, South Africa, Ukraine, including the president, who are Jewish or have learned they are Jewish. In fact, Hungary, next to Israel, has the largest percentage of Jewish people in the world. And that was recently determined. But our focus today is going to be on people who are here at this event and who learned that they were Jewish sometime in adulthood. The first participant I'm going to call on is Jane Davis. I met Jane through the Genealogical Society. We turned out to be DNA matched. We had someone that we both matched as well. So she will be the first person I'm going to call on. Ellie Richmond lives across the street from me. her significant other, Julian Cortez, is also with her. And Ellie has just an incredible story to tell, so she will be our second person. And our third person is Cather Wiener Deneen Pike. I met her at a Jewish education class. I believe that she did not use DNA to find out she was Jewish, but found out by other means. But I'm going to let each of them share their stories. And I have a whole amount of stuff that I could introduce people with, but I think that I will kind of let you do that. I just will mention we're going to start with Jane, and Jane, you can unmute yourself. Jane is a retired teacher. She started doing genealogy considerably earlier than a lot of people I know in 1990. She knew that she had a Jewish ancestor, but didn't know much about him. But through the internet and then later DNA analysis, she did find out that she had Jewish heritage. She also paid a professional genealogist to help her out. And so I introduce Jane Davis.
Hello. My Jewish ancestor came through my father's side of the family. I just remember this snippet as a very little girl, my mother mentioning that I had a Jewish ancestor. And I said, well, how much Jewish am I? And she said, oh, about as much as is in your little toe. And anyway, I wasn't into genealogy or anything. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, one traffic light town in Ohio, St. Clairsville, which is not far from Wheeling, West Virginia. That's the biggest town around. And I never knew any Jewish people that I know of that even lived in town. I grew up mainly in the Methodist church. I remember that a Sunday school teacher took us to a field trip to the Jewish temple in Wheeling, West Virginia one time. I remember that. And then other than that, I didn't think about anything. Then I went to college at Ohio State, which is there were 50,000 people there at the time. And that was sort of my first introduction to anybody who was Jewish, because there were a lot of people from Cleveland and, the cities and stuff that were Jewish. So not that I knew anybody really well, but anyway, then when I went through a divorce and a lot of emotional turmoil, someone happened to come by my sister's house. Look, my maiden name was Purdy, trying to do genealogy to find out if we were a relative. And it sort of got me interested because I sort of wanted to know who I was. I didn't, where did I come from? So anyway, I started doing genealogy. And at first, things are easy to find. And my older sister, well, from what we knew, our ancestor was an Abram Hyman, who left our relative and ran off with somebody south in the Civil War, and that he was supposed to be a tailor. So anyway, I was searching everywhere for Abram Hyman, and I thought he was probably a Confederate, and all this kind of stuff. I thought I would never find out anything about him because, So anyway, then on Ancestry, I happened to have I forget now exactly, but a relative who found him. Well, I guess I had found out my great grandmother, was Eleanora Hyman, and I always thought her father's name, my great grandfather, was Abram. Well, I found out his name was Henry Ferdinand Hyman. And he had all kinds of records in public, government databases because he apparently was a soldier. And what I found out about him was that he was born in 1815 in Germany. And when he came here, he joined the, I think it was the Marines, stayed in that for about a year, deserted, but nobody came after him. Then I think back in that time, they gave you money for signing up. I don't know. But I just found out all this stuff about him through military records and all that. I found letters that he wrote, and to my ancestor, Susan Koch, and I still haven't found a lot of detail about her. He married her in Pennsylvania. I think he was like in Philadelphia and Maryland. And anyway, he married her. They had a lot of children, but then, okay, I don't know, it's kind of amazing. He was all over the place, but he worked for New York City Life, and he met a girl there that he ended up marrying. Well, before he was divorced from the first wife, I guess. And anyway, going down south, he fought in the Seminole Indian Wars in Florida, went as far as Veracruz, Mexico. He was in the Mexican-American War, and he was in the Civil War. And at age 49, he was in the artillery, which was like cannons and stuff. And he got a concussion in the Civil War and eventually died from that at age 49. What amazed me is that he could be he must have had a tremendously good immune system, because so many ancestors or people that I know of who were in wars like that got some sort of disease and either died or was sick. So that impressed me. But anyway, I knew all this stuff about him. I knew the children, I knew his wife, but I could not find any brothers, sisters, or parents or anything like that. And it was like driving me crazy because I knew so much about him. So finally, this deal came up with a trace, and they said, for some money, we will put your information out there to any genealogist who thinks they can find anything. So somebody took me up on it, and I ended up paying, I think it was like close to $1,000, but he found him through Family Search. And I found who his parents were, from Darmstadt, Germany. I went back like 2 generations. Well, I might say before that, in looking, I tried to do DNA. I thought, okay, I'll find him through DNA. Well, as it turns out, because of endogamy, you only go back so far, and then so many people intermarried that it's hard to find people. But anyway, I did find that Leah and I share some distant relative, apparently, but I don't know who. So anyway, that's sort of my story. Oh, I did do, through this Meyer somebody, I finally did a big Y through family tree DNA. Well, I found out that he was a Levite. He had the Levite gene. And I thought, I'm going to go back and I'm going to find rabbis and everything else. Well, when I went back to Germany, I found out that his sister, one of them married a Catholic, and the other one converted to Lutheranism. So I don't know. That's where I'm at.
I have a question. And are people hearing me? I'm not sure. Yes?
I'm hearing you.
Okay.
Yes.
How has learning about your Jewish heritage, how has it affected your life?
Well, I've just become very interested in learning about Judaism, people who are Jewish. In fact, well, since I'm single, I went on Match.com and I met this guy, and I sort of picked him out because he was Jewish. And anyway, I've been close friends with him for probably going on 15 years now, and visited his family, who they're not very religious, okay? But anyway, it's affected my life that way. And just being like down here, I go to the Jewish food festivals. Actually, one of my college roommates who passed away married a Jewish guy from Ohio State, and now I'm friends with him. And I don't know, I guess one thing I have a hard time understanding is that why there is anti-Semitism. I don't understand it. Nothing really makes sense to me.
I don't think that any of us could explain that either. Maybe someone can later. Okay, thank you, Jen. People can ask questions later or through chat. Please chat to everybody if you ask a question. All right, the next person I want to introduce is Ellie Richmond, who is my neighbor. And I think both Ellie and Julian, maybe you can both unmute. Ellie learned that she was Jewish when she was 18 years old. She learned from her mother. And if I have the story correct, I think her mother learned through family documents and found a ketubah. And for those of you who don't know, a ketubah is a marriage certificate. And Ellie, if I didn't get this right, please correct me. Ellie's and her family, her mother, Ellie, her son, ended up going to Israel. And she spent 10 years there. She'll tell you how she met Julian. It's similar to how you met your friend too, Jane, but she'll mention that. In any case, Ellie has embraced Judaism and her son has been bat mitzvahed. And I was so happy when she and Julian moved in across the street from us, because it's something that we really share. So it's really nice. So Ellie and Julian, your turn.
Thank you, Leah. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Everybody good? Okay, good. Just making sure. Well, that was a really sweet introduction. Yes, I did learn when I was 18, and my mom did learn about her Jewish ancestry when through some documents, but in a really interesting way. She grew up in a, very outwardly observant Catholic family, very religious, went to mass. But every Friday, looking back, she sees some of the signs. Look, every Friday, my grandmother would put 2 candles on the table and make a funny braided loaf of bread every Friday. And they always sat down for family dinner. And sometimes they had her family over, sisters and brothers. Sometimes they didn't, or sometimes they invited the downstairs neighbors. But it was like a tradition. And my mom grew up thinking it was just, that was like family dinner night. It was my grandmother's little quirk to have these 2 candles and this braided loaf of bread. Fast forward many years, and my grandmother was in a home and was not doing well. She was dying of breast cancer. And so my mom flew up to spend, had flown several times to see her and spend time with her, and was going back and forth. And on one of those trips, my grandmother told her, please, go to the house, and there's a box there with some mementos. Please bring it to me. So my mom went to her house, got the box, brought it back to her, and my grandmother opened it and was pulling out some things and showed her a talit that was her grandfather's, and my mom's dad, and pulled out a pair of silver candlesticks that actually my mom had never seen. The candlesticks that my grandmother always put on the table were just in plain nothing that screamed Judaism by any means. And excuse me, allergies. So she kept pulling out all this stuff and some family photos and things like that. And the last thing she pulled out was the ketubah, my mother's parents' ketubah, and explained to my mom that their big Catholic wedding had been preceded by a very private, almost no one knew about it, Jewish wedding in a basement synagogue in where was it in Massachusetts? Oh my gosh, the name is Fairhaven, in Fairhaven, Massachusetts. A basement, kind of back in those times. I mean, that was kind of World War II era. Stories were starting to leak out. People were nervous about hearing what was coming across the pond. So they had a very private Jewish ceremony hidden. And then I guess it was just past that. And then afterwards, like I think a week later, they had a big splashy Catholic wedding for outward appearances. And years later, my mom finds out that, both of her parents are Jewish and Sephardic, Portuguese. They're Portuguese Jews. So my mom went on a hunt to find, more information. What does it mean? Like she had no clue. She had been raised Catholic and had kind of left Catholicism at this point and was kind of searching and had kind of fallen into a non-denominational Christian atmosphere, which was really loving and warm. She found very great friends and just very accepting. So she felt very much at home in that. And then all of a sudden she gets this news. And but she had always really strongly felt an affinity with the Jewish people, that she just thought it was just like a respect that she had for them because of the history and because of the place they held in the Bible, etc. So she went on a journey. My dad took the journey with her. He did not have any Jewish ancestry that they could find at the time, but this was, let's see, I was 18, I'm 50 now, so it was a long time ago. So they didn't have ancestry and DNA and things like that way back then. So they just learned what they could through searching public records. And so, yeah, that was how my mom found out. And of course, they sat us down and told all of us kids, I'm the oldest of 4. And we all thought, well, what does that mean? What does that look like? So we all kind of went, each of us, on our own individual journey. And I really felt comfortable in Judaism. The more I learned about it, the more it made sense to me, the more comfortable I felt. And then years later, making the decision to go to Israel, which my son was pushing me to do at the time. He was 16 when we moved there. So 2 years after we moved, he went into the army for 3 years. If anybody ever meets him, he's very Israeli now. He's fluent in Hebrew. He's been through the army. That's where he grew up. 16 to 26 was his formative years in Israel. So he still has a very strong Israeli presence and loves it and is hoping to go back soon. And in the meantime, I thoroughly enjoyed my 10 years there. Was amazing. Learning the language, making friends, building a life there was really special. And it really connected me to my Judaism in a way that was so different from being in America. I think being here, it was very much a sense of that you have to do something in order to identify as a Jew, because there's not a lot of people around you that are. And when I went to Israel, the shift was, the fact that, that the whole country shuts down on Shabbat, Friday night to Saturday night, and no one is working. And everyone has all of the Hagim off, businesses are closed. I don't have to ask my boss for Yom Kippur or Pesach or any of those, Sukkot. I just automatically had it off. And it was such a wonderful feeling to feel like I was a part of a very, very large family in the Middle East, that we all did the same things on the same schedule, and everybody, it was such a great feeling. Making the decision to come back to the States after 10 years there, did take me a bit of time to decide that. but I felt like I had learned what I could learn, and I had had such a wonderful experience, and I wanted to be able to bring some of that back to the States. And my sister and my brothers are here, and my mom had been kind of traveling back and forth, and then eventually during COVID, she ended up being here, and so just decided to stay because she wanted to be near grandkids, which makes sense. And then about let's see, just about a year, a little bit less than a year before I was kind of in the planning mode of moving back to the States. And I thought, well, I don't want to give up on Israel completely because I just love it. And I have so many friends here. So I'd like to spend, part of my year in Israel and in Europe. My Portuguese side is very important to me, and my European roots. And I'd love to spend some time in Europe. But I want to be in the States. I want to be near my family. And my mom, being the good Jewish mom that she was, I'd been divorced for a very long time. And she was like, well, you need to have a husband, as all good Jewish moms like to say. And I kind of thought, well, it'll happen when it's supposed to happen. And she said, well, I'm just, it's almost your birthday. My birthday's in January. I'm just going to get you a membership to eHarmony. And, we'll see what happens. So, of course, my mom was right. About 4 or 5 weeks after joining eHarmony, I met Julian on there, and we connected right away. And he, in his bio, talked about finding out about his Sephardic Jewish ancestry through DNA. I found it out without DNA. He found it through DNA. So that was the thing that kind of bonded us a little bit. So we started talking about it. At the time, I was still in Israel. And he was in Puerto Rico at the time, taking care of his dad. And so we kind of bonded over that. And that was, I think we met at the end of February, right at the very beginning of COVID. And then June, I flew to the States. I had already planned a trip to go visit with my family, but I combined it with meeting with him at the same time. So we met. And we had spent a lot of time talking, and, I guess a pandemic, and you can't travel, you can't do anything. It gives you a lot of time to talk. So we did a lot of that, and learning about each other and talking about Judaism and talking about our Jewish roots and what it meant to us and how we viewed our lives going forward. And then we met in June, and by October I was moved and was back in the States, and we moved in together, and we formally got engaged, was it 2 weeks ago in Portugal? So, yay. So that was exciting. So that's really my story. Finding all of that out really made such an impact on how I raised my son. And I think that's the last tidbit I would share, and then I'll pass it off to Julian, is that finding out at 18 that I was Jewish, and I started learning and slowly kind of understanding what does that mean. By the time a few years later, I had my son, it meant to me, as soon as I had this little baby, I thought, oh, what do I teach him? And so it really kind of even more spurred what do I want to share from my history to pass on to my son? So that was really where it started for me. And this is where we are now. So I will let Julian take up the story.
Well, before I dive in, any questions, reactions to Ellie's incredible journey?
Jen, I think we're going to get questions a little later. so
Later,
that-
okay,
yeah, time
okay,
for-
perfect.
I know one way that Ellie has really embraced Judaism. She makes challah. I can die for her challah. It is the best. Go ahead, Julian.
And wait, and I saw your heart emoticon. Thank you so much. That's very sweet. So nice to meet you all. Ellie just provided a background of how we met. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, although I've lived all over the world for many years. And I did happen to be in Puerto Rico when we met in 2020. In 2018, I've always been very curious about anything that has to do with science and gadgets and things. And I said, hey, I would like to take a DNA test. And frankly, as a Puerto Rican, I knew I had a kind of a core blend, a mix of, European, Native American, African. And that's kind of every Puerto Rican knows that that's our influence. But I was curious to understand the balance. And So I took two tests. I took the ancestry and I took my heritage. My heritage came first, and it came with a 20% Sephardic Jewish influence. And and I was like, well, what is it? I'm pretty sure I've heard the term Sephardic before, but I had to, frankly, I had to go to the dictionary to understand what it meant. I was raised Catholic. Catholic parish school. I went to the Catholic University of America. I had as Catholic an upbringing, as you can imagine. So obviously I knew about the Bible, I know about history, and always interested in philosophy and religion. But I, frankly, I was not particularly religious at the time. And, my pursuit of, the DNA results was just sheer curiosity and interest in science. But when I learned about this, it coincided with a time when I was also exploring ways to spend more time in Europe, particularly in the Iberian Peninsula, where, as we speak, I'm pursuing the citizenship. And for me, the first reaction was one of interest in history. So like Sephardic, what does it mean to be, a Sephardic Jew? And the more I learned about it, the more fascinated I became by the story of 700 years of the flourishing of three cultures living in peace together. The Christian, the Muslim, and the Jewish faiths coexisting and really turning the Iberian Peninsula into a beautiful place. And the more I learned about it, the more intrigued I became about the whole journey and the process of transition of folks who ended up like I did, thousands of miles due west in the Americas. And so, I would say that before meeting Ellie, for me, it was largely a history mystery. And in meeting her, I think it's taken my interest in Judaism to a different level, understanding it not only from a religious standpoint, but also understanding it from a cultural standpoint, given, Ellie's experience in Israel. So I love her halas, but beyond that, I love how she gives me a firsthand, very personal glimpse into life in Judaism. And and it's an ongoing process. And I'm delighted to have met also Leah and Marvin and others who have continued to broaden and embellish that journey.
Thank you so much, Julian.
Thank you.
We will come to back to questions later. Our third speaker today is Catherine Weiner Deneen Pike. Catherine and I met at a Jewish education course at Chabad. And she had told me an incredible story, and I felt that this is a story people should hear and should share. And Catherine's been an RN for 38 years. She has specialized in pediatrics. She has 5 children, and she has a second husband who is Jewish, and they have had an incredible journey together. And I'm going to let her tell you more about that. But she found out about her Judaism through her grandfather, who's named Leah Weiner, who had a chest that had documents and a Jewish star in it. Okay, Catherine, it's your journey.
Hi. Well, you really told the whole story right there. So, but going back a little bit, I was raised Catholic as well. Catholic schools, the baptism, everything. But we weren't allowed to ask any questions in our household about the Bible, about anything. And that's just how it was. So when my grandfather passed away, he did have, one of those chests that you put blankets in and things. Well, my cousins opened it up and found all this Polish writings and pictures. And I don't know if you can see that this is his Jewish star.
Yeah.
Can you see it? I don't know. There. So that's my grandfather's Jewish star from Poland. And they gave the writings and the Jewish star to me. And then it just kind of all hit us like, oh, okay. So now it kind of makes sense, because my grandfather used to take my cousin to the synagogue every Saturday and just sit out in front in the car. And my cousin had no idea why he did that, but it kind of makes sense. And then since then, I've been really interested, and that was when I was 50. So I grew up basically my whole life as Catholic. But I had always asked my mom, I said, you know, wasn't Jesus a Jew? And she said, yes. And I said, well, then aren't we all Jewish? And she didn't really know what to say. And it's kind of sad because I believe she passed away not even knowing that she herself and her sister were Jewish. But what had happened from the writings that were found is that the Weiner family came over from Prussia to escape the Nazis. And by doing so, they said that they were Catholic. And so my grandfather just kept that secret because he wanted a good education. So he went to a Catholic college. He went to just to get a good education. So it was never even brought up. It was never talked about after that. And his family, the Weiner family, disowned him from doing that. So when he passed away, my cousins up in Minnesota, they went to the Weiner, they have like a farm. And they went to the Weiner farm to find out more information. And they were very hush-hush about it, and they really wouldn't talk about him that much. But so that's kind of where I'm at now. But after that, I thought, okay, just like you, Ellie, I'm Jewish, you know, because I always thought I was never really into the whole, I never prayed to Jesus, you know, in the Catholic Church. I would pray to God. Now, I don't know. I just thought that that's who you're supposed to pray to. And so I met my husband, and he's Jewish. And when we got married, I don't know if you are, Ellie, but we got married in the synagogue. And since then, we had this wonderful journey to Russia where we got the Torahs that were taken from the Nazis, but he can tell you more about that. So I don't know, Leah, if that's my story. Is that pretty much it?
It's an incredible story. I have a question for you before, it's Peter, right? Before we go on.
Yeah.
Once you learned that you were actually Jewish, did that mean that you didn't have to convert to Judaism because you already knew you were Jewish?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Peter?
Well, hello, everybody. Yeah, I was raised Jewish in New York, in the city. So everybody else was, you know, either Jewish or Italian. Didn't have any issues that way. But what Catherine hasn't told you, what I'd like to share with you, is actually how we met. And Ellie, you know, you met on eHarmony. I like to say that we met on Match.com, even though we really didn't. Oh, stop, honey, it's okay. About a year before we met, Catherine was on Match.com trying to find somebody for her friend who was getting ready to get divorced. And she's going through all these things, and she comes across this one thing, this guy who, you know, as she describes it, he's very funny, but not very good looking. But she printed out the whole thing from Match and kept it under her computer. And then a little bit later, she found out she's Jewish, she's getting divorced. And what happened was, unfortunately, because of her divorce, her ex-husband made it impossible for her to keep her home, and she had to short sell it. So her realtor had her do her short sale through the office that I was working at. I'm a real estate attorney. And I didn't understand that this was really kind of a fix-up type of thing. So, you know, she has me come in and say, hello, very nice to meet you, and I leave. And about 20 minutes later, after they're all gone, the light bulb goes off in my head. And so I call the realtor, who's a friend of ours, in her car, little knowing that I was on speakerphone and the two of them were there together. And I said, listen, I didn't realize this is what it was, but if she's interested, I would love to meet her. Just do me a favor, give her my number, or if she wants, give me her number. They're high-fiving each other. And the really interesting part about it was, while they were leaving the offices, Catherine asks the realtor, he looks familiar. Is he Jewish? And the realtor goes, I don't know about that, but he's very funny. She went home, she pulled out the page from her computer, and lo and behold, it was me. So I love to say it was Beshert, even though it's second marriage, that doesn't really count for Beshert, but I like to say that.
I'm so sorry. I did not know that he was going to be saying this.
Why? It's a lovely story. Everybody's
It's
smiling. It's a
beautiful.
nice
It's
thing.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I
So-
agree. I agree. Okay, Peter, go ahead.
So, and Catherine wanted to learn about Judaism, and I was happy to teach her what I knew. But there came a point in time when we decided that, when we got married and we were going to join a shul. It was nice. We met in Destin, Florida, up on the Panhandle. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with that area or not, but basically, I belong to the one synagogue that was in that area, and I think there were 80 families. That was it. We go to Pensacola once in a while, because in Pensacola there were a couple of synagogues, and I got to know the rabbi of the of the conservative shul there. He happened to move from Pensacola to Vegas. And we were traveling to Vegas with the friends who introduced us, and decided that'd be a great time to get married in Vegas. And I didn't want to get married by Elvis. And this rabbi said, oh, I'll be happy to marry you. And we were able to be married in the shul under a chuppah. It was lovely. So you want me to talk about Russia? I'll talk about Russia. My cousin, her son-in-law, was one of the people who were involved in getting restitution for Holocaust victims. And in all of his research, he had found out about a bunch of Torah scrolls that were pillaged by the Germans on their way back to Germany when Russia and the US basically won the war. Russia intercepted that train and took everything back to Russia. And within there were a little over 100 Torah scrolls, and I believe 3 Megillot Esther, that had been taken from a whole bunch of Eastern European Jewish communities. They wound up in a closet in a city called Nizhny Novgorod. Now, up until a few years ago, nobody ever heard of this place because it was basically a KGB city that was totally secret. It was found out about through contacts within the Chabad community and the Orthodox community and other things. We were actually able to get not just to Russia, but into Nizhny. We saw all of these Torahs, and we were actually allowed to take 10 of them, and we brought them back to the US. Now, we're still trying to get the rest of them out. They were literally just sitting in a closet. Most of them are not kosher any longer. But what we're doing is trying to get them to be redone so that they can be kosher and, given out to different communities, to different synagogues. But it was an amazing trip, an amazing thing to have been able to have been a part of.
Oh, it was, and for me, just trying to learn about everything, it was so emotional to see just the scrolls just in a corner of a closet, and to think that they were the families of peoples. I would love to give them back to whoever the families were, but all the jewels on them were taken already.
Yeah,
but it was
many of the scrolls were actually family scrolls. It's not like here in the US where, you know, the shul has the Torahs. There, your families had your own Torah as well. And they were often beautiful with gold and jewels on the handles. Those were all taken. But through different methods, we have been able to find out, to a small extent at least, which communities some of these scrolls came from. The Jewish communities no longer exist in those places, unfortunately. And yeah, it's just an incredibly interesting situation.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Before I open it up to everyone who's here, my cousin Susan Hutton is here. My maiden name is Hutton, so she is my closest relative, although we are relatives through marriage. But Susan is, I don't know if Trishelle is with you, but perhaps I can tell the story and maybe you can just, unmute yourself. But Susan has a son named Ethan. Our Hutton family was a very religious family, and Susan brought up her both sons in Judaism. But Ethan, like me, actually, we married people who were not Jewish. But then at some point in time, Susan's daughter-in-law, Trishelle, found out that she was Jewish. I worked with Trishelle about 10 years ago. We were working on a family tree. Her daughter, Lila, just got bar mitzvah a few weeks ago, and I updated the family tree. And when she had a bar mitzvah, I made a book of the family tree for Lila, which she's 13, probably has absolutely no interest so far, but she'll have this book someday to go back to. We have another cousin who at his bar mitzvah, we also made a book. Susan, can you unmute yourself? Do you want to add to that?
Oh, first of all, thank you. Well, what Trishelle did after marrying Ethan at the courthouse, fast forward a few years, she had already gone to the synagogue, spoken to the rabbi, started her conversion, and then let us know. And we were just, we accepted Trish. I mean, she is fabulous. She's kind. She's the whole entire package. Never realized, it never came up. Would you convert or nothing? Nothing. Well, she did it. And before you know it, she is teaching Sunday school in Macon, Georgia, just totally involved. And her daughter now makes the best challah. She's now a baker in Macon, and she does the baking for the synagogue, bagels, challah, whatever you need, all under total Orthodox, rabbinic, the certification. And Trish is the one now that makes the blessing over the challah before the challah is baked in this kitchen in Macon. So we're just like, wow, what? And Leah has been to many of our seders. She embraced it. We loved it. And I just saw at the corner of my eye, hi, Susie and Russ down in South Carolina. But it's just been fabulous. And today she's busy with doing something with Lila, but this has been marvelous. I was born Jewish, so I can't imagine what it's like for all of you to find out at age 18, at older. I can't. It's very interesting. I'm so happy to be part of this today. Really, truly. I appreciate it.
I love you, Susan.
Thank
you so much for sharing. Another person who is going to share with us today is Rita, and I don't know if I've seen her. Rita, anyone see Rita? I can't see everybody on my screen right now. All right, I think I will call on people that we started earlier, that I saw some people. Dana, are you here? Dana. Dana, would you like to share? Dana Cunningham?
Yes, I had to find my unmute button. I guess my story is very different from the others that have been shared. I grew up in Beaumont, Texas, in two very, very large African-American families. My mother's side of the family was Creole, very, very Catholic, and my father's side of the family was Methodist. But as I got older, when I moved to Chicago, and by that time I had my three children, I got a chance to really get close to my aunt, Maureen, who was the fourth of 9 children on my father's side. And she told me that my grandmother, her mother, had grown up in Corsicana, Texas. And she never, ever talked about her family because she had an unhappy childhood. Her mother conceived her when the mother was 16 years old. And the story that she was told, that my Aunt Maureen was told, was that there was a traveling Jewish merchant who had come through town, and that my great-grandmother was traumatized by the conception of my grandmother and was never able to really be affectionate to her. And my grandmother, when she was a young teenager, her family was approached by a white family in the town. There had been a lynching, and Corsicana was a small town where people knew other people's business. And this white family went to my grandmother's family and said they were moving away from Corsicana because there had been a lynching, and any town that had had a lynching wouldn't prosper. So they asked if they could take my grandmother with them to Beaumont, Texas, so that she could be a mother helper to them with their 3 children. So my grandmother Myrtle moved to Beaumont, Texas with this family. And at a point when she was older, they went to the Methodist church and asked and told the minister that they had this very nice colored girl who was living with them, and they wanted her to meet some of the nicer colored families in the language of the time. And there she met my grandfather, and they got married, and they raised 9 children and took in 4 of the children who they helped to raise. During my teenage years, I was very interested in different faiths. I was this, very strong Catholic family. And I looked at race in terms of Black and white. We lived in a very Black community. We went to all Black schools. And the white people we interacted with, and most of those interactions weren't very pleasant. But it wasn't until the assassination of John Kennedy that I realized that white people had divisions. My father had a close relationship with a man who owned a men's store, where we did a lot of shopping, and he came over and visited with my father at our house and said that the cars parked outside his store had been leafleted with anti-Semitic leaflets, blaming Kennedy's assassination on the Jews. And so that was the first time that I realized that I thought white people were white people. And I recognized that there were divisions, that there were white people, there were Italian people. And I realized that the Italians were different because the neighborhood grocery stores in the Black neighborhoods were owned by Italians who lived behind their stores. And then there were these Jewish people, and I didn't really know that much about it. So in high school, I started reading books by Jewish authors, and I ended up doing my senior term paper on the comparisons between Muslims, Jews, and Christians. But I never really made a personal connection to the Jewish heritage in my family because we didn't really know anything about it. And I had my DNA done a few years ago, and lo and behold, I'm 22 point something percent Ashkenazi Jew. And I said, well, I guess that verifies the oral, history that we had from the family. And then fast forward, we moved to Sarasota about 6 years ago, when you get these updates saying you have new DNA relatives. And I had a DNA relative who was in Sarasota, and it was a second cousin. And I thought, oh my gosh, I had gotten these other DNA relatives who were, all of the Jewish ones were 99 point something percent Ashkenazi. And here, I had one who said, you're connected by your 39th great grandparent. And here was a person who was a second cousin. So I met her finally last week. We met at C'est La Vie on Main Street. And, it was difficult for me to say, how I got my Jewish heritage to someone who was related to that person. But she was just very, very kind and gracious. And we're looking forward to getting to know each other better. She has a brother who's very much into genealogy. And so the next time we get together, it'll be at her house so she can roll out this huge family tree. So that's kind of my story.
Thank you so much. How has knowing that you are partially Jewish, how has it impacted your life? Because I think I understood that you joined a synagogue.
No, I haven't joined.
Okay, so I'm mixing that up. Okay, all right.
Yeah. It really hasn't affected me very much. I went on a Catholic pilgrimage to Israel in 2016. And my best friend who went on the pilgrimage with me said that she had been there before. And she said their tour guide was Jewish. And the one that we went on together, our tour guide was Palestinian. And she said how it was so very, very different that on the one tour, we only saw two things that were Jewish. And on the other tour, she didn't see anything at all that was Christian. So it was very interesting having her do the comparison and contrast between her two experiences.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, next person I'm going to call on, who I really don't know, but she's with us, Suzanne.
Hi, hello, Leah. I want to thank all of you for this wonderful Zoom meeting. It means a lot to me. I feel an affinity to everybody's story. And I will summarize my story briefly if I can. In my pursuit of unveiling on my mother's side of the family how Cherokee we were, because we're a member of the Cherokee Nation, much to my surprise, my DNA came back 51% Ashkenazi. And my dad is not Jewish, and I knew my mother's DNA. So I was, to say the least, I was baffled. And I thought that DNA test reflected all four of us, my mother's 4 children. And as it turns out, it only reflected me. So I was definitely a mystery to myself. And because of DNA matching you to cousins and stuff, somebody had reached out to me from LA claiming, and it said that it was my cousin. I was even more confused because these family names were just surfacing that I'd never heard of, and I couldn't piece it all together. And finally, his sibling reached out to me, his sister, and we're cousins, of course. And I found out that my biological father lived 2 hours away, and he's turning 95. And he knew about me my whole life, but I certainly didn't know about him. And meeting him and establishing a relationship with him has meant everything to me, because it helps me heal from these weird wounds that I carried my whole life. I didn't fit in with my siblings. I didn't look like any of my cousins on my dad's side of the family. My mother was adopted, so all of those cousins were also, of course, adopted. And so I had no biological connection to anybody. I mean, I'm half siblings with my siblings, but still, yeah, I just didn't fit in. And I always had an affinity for Jewish people, dating and friends, and I was always fascinated. And I realize now why that is. And so I appreciate sharing my story, because from mystery opens up a whole world, and I have a whole nother family now that didn't know about me. I didn't know about them. I have 5 cousins in LA, some kind of famous, and it's all good. Like, it's just good. So thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I was wondering if someone who would be here today would have the kind of story that you have. And I think it means a lot for people to hear that. Are there other people who would like to share? And I'm not sure, I guess you could raise your hand if I can see you. Is there someone else who would like to share? And if not, well, I think we'll do questions, but let me see. We'll hold for a minute. Oh, Catherine and Peter, did you want to share something? No? Okay, I'm not seeing hands, but I'm only seeing half of the people. So Jamie, yes?
Yes, I want to thank you all for sharing the mystery and the discoveries and the profundities of who you are, because it also, from my point of view, it raises the wealth of who I am as a Jew, and what it takes for people to discover what was missing, that fiber that just wasn't connecting. I really thank you for sharing that. If some of you could, there was so much information, but could some of you just briefly say my Jewish heritage was on my father, or I didn't get, Suzanne, your father was Jewish?
My father is Jewish. Yep, Israeli as well.
And he lives in Sarasota?
No, another town. He's alive, so but
Okay.
2 hours away. Yeah.
And you, when I heard you say is you became meeting him.
Yes.
How was that?
It wasn't balloons and chocolate. It was not happy. He was extremely, and this has only been 3 years, 4 years maybe.
Okay.
So I'm in my 60s, he's in his 90s. I was in my late 50s, I guess. Because he and my mother had made a vow to keep it a secret and never, ever talk about it, ever. And he never saw a baby picture of me. I mean, it was a non-topic in his life. It had to be. And so he felt incredibly threatened that my cousins would reveal all this, all from the results from Ancestry.com. He was so angry at them. And I finally had to straighten them out. It's taken me 3 years to say, they didn't do anything wrong. They didn't make that vow of secrecy. You did. They weren't in your bedroom. You know, I mean, I really had to straighten that out with him because he feels guilt. And I said, are you going to take this to your grave? Will you just stop? You know, because now I'm close enough to him that I can speak to him like a family member. And he thanked me. He thanked me for help steering that ship for him, because as he's declining, we all know, you know, it's going to happen. And it's been a very complicated story. It has over time gotten so much warmer and friendlier. I'm still a guest when I go see him. I'm in his home with his wife, a more recent wife. So, you know, and I've asked him 100,000 questions. I want to know everything. I want to know about the genealogy that he's aware of. He's quite patriarchal in his approach, which I find amusing. because that's just the way it is. It is on my Y chromosome. So I hope to, through the resources that have been presented here, find out more. I do have some names, and I've been trying to unveil all the female names because those are the ones that are lost, you know, and I've just joked to him about it because he always talks about that one patriarchal line. And I said, do you know how many lines there are in your genealogy? Why do you focus on that one? There's so much more to this. So it's been fascinating, and I can't thank you all enough for allowing me this forum where I feel comfortable. Thank you.
Would you follow any to the Judaism or any? Are you at? Does it provoke? Have you gone to services or met?
I've been a pianist my whole life. I've done so many Shabbat services as an accompanist. I mean, it's natural. I never knew why I felt so at home. As far as becoming, you know, Jewish in the religion, I don't feel a need. It's already in me.
Right.
At this stage in the game, I'm 61 years old. It's really okay. I got it. I got this. So it's all good.
Thank you, Suzanne. I see Liz has a hand up. Liz Klaber.
Thank you. I was curious for Dana or for any of the others if their siblings have shown any interest since you've made those connections.
Can I answer that one? So as I said, I grew up with 3 siblings and none of them are Jewish. So they took the news a little, my two brothers were like, whatever. But my sister, she had to process that because we're no longer full sisters anymore. And it did impact her for a minute. It did. We're fine now. But she had to like vent. She was yelling at me at one point, just hurt. And my father had 2 boys. And one of them's in a nursing home. He's mentally challenged. I will definitely reach out to him once my father does make his transition, because I'm not going to remain a mystery forever. And he probably would be happy to meet a sister. The other one is a grown man. He's successful career, done good things in life, loved by all these cousins I have. He's my half brother. He wants nothing to do with me, nothing. In spite of every attempt I've made to reach out to him, he only lives an hour from me. He's a few years older, and it's sad. Like there's a sadness in me that I have a brother walking this earth who. So I presented that to my father just last week. I said, look, you know, there's going to be an event. Something might happen to you. And am I going to stay in the car in the parking lot and not go into an institution where there might be something going on? I didn't want to say you're going to die and you're going to have a funeral in a synagogue and I'm not invited. But I don't know how to bridge that, and I'm not quite sure how to do it, except all the cousins that will appear from another state. They'll all be there and they all love me. So maybe I'll just walk in with them and it'll be okay.
Thank you.
Alan Lowe. Unmute, please. Alan, you're muted. You're still muted.
What do I press?
Oh, you go. Okay, Jim, did you pressed it twice? Press it again because you're muted again. You had unmuted, but now you're muted. Jim, can you direct?
Alan, you just need to press. I can't unmute you. I can ask you to unmute. There you go. Well, you did it again. Now, hang on. Don't do anything, Alan. Stand by. Try it one more time, Alan. Are you seeing something? It's just push it once. There you go. Stop.
Am I there?
Yep.
You're good. You're good, Alan.
Okay, I moved here about 70 years ago, and I saw signs, no dogs or Jews allowed on the beach. And I thought we really had some problems, but we've gone a long way. I'm really impressed with those of you that did not have the comfort of having both a mother and father Jewish from the beginning. You deserve a lot of credit for your drive and your interest and what you've gone through. I'm really impressed with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. At the beginning, oh, okay, I see more hands up. Dana again.
Well, when I was in Michigan, I got very involved with race relations and cultural diversity. And we were living in an area that was very Jewish, and my daughter was invited to bar and bar mitzvahs. And so one of them, I was invited to the ceremony in the synagogue. And I was just amazed at how many of the prayers that were said were the exact same prayers that are in the Catholic Mass. And it just made me, that experience and going to Rome for Mother Teresa's beatification made me very, very aware of the universality of humankind, that we are all one people and that we share so much. And all these man-made divisions are just nonsense. And I think that's especially something to be considered in the political climate in the United States today.
Very nice observation. Thank you. Catherine and Peter. Make sure you unmute
Yes,
yourself.
I was just wondering if anyone felt kind of the same way I did. I don't, you know, Dana, you kind of touched on that you grew up Catholic, and then at an age like I was 50, and then thinking that you've really been Jewish, kind of like where am I? Where do I fit in? What now? But like what Dana was saying, I have my mother's what's it called? It's the lace that
Mantilla.
Yeah, well, she wore it in the Catholic faith, but then in the Jewish faith, the women wear that as well. And just like what you were saying, Dana, there's so many similarities now that I'm learning so much about Judaism, that it is all one, but yet I still feel like I'm being pulled. Like, I don't know, really, I don't know. I kind of feel lost, and I don't know if anybody else had felt that way, or I don't know.
If other people want to contribute, please.
Well, you know, in my case, I was Catholic by training, less by conviction. So I had already I was at a point, I was already in my mid-50s when I learned. And, you know, I think in many ways I was looking for a home. I was looking for kind of the next chapter in my growth, spiritually and otherwise. It just, for me, was an invitation to get to know more about me. And, you know, in addition to the near-term gifts that he's given me, Allie, among several, he's also giving me an opportunity to extend it to my kids, because in my particular case, there were no traces whatsoever in my family. And, you know, and I've asked, and there were no indications of, Judaistic practices. And so, if, you know, for me, it's an opportunity, in many ways, it's a challenge to kind of extend this gift of knowing. But, you know, I didn't have any struggle. It was quite welcome. It was like, okay, this is a bright new chapter.
I'll add to that really quickly. I think Julian he loves to learn. He would be a lifelong student. He is a lifelong student. So for him, I think it was just a fascination of, wow, what does this mean? And where can I go with it? What does it add to my understanding of who I am? In my case, with my siblings, it was a matter of, I seem to I accepted it much more easily. I have 3 other siblings, 2 that are still very much in the Christian church. They understand that they're Jewish, and they understand that myself and their other brother are, you know, fully in Judaism and have lived that way for, you know, now we've been living as a Jew longer than we were not now at this point in our lives. And teaching our children that, and our children have been raised with only that and not knowing anything else. But 2 of my siblings have really struggled with it and have really felt like their identity, they didn't know what to do with it, Catherine. They were like, they felt very pulled. They felt very, well, but this was my identity and I don't know what to make of it now. And how do I reconcile this? And it's been a struggle for many years. Both of them have kind of gone in and out where they'll attend some holidays. They'll do, we did Pesach together, we've done Sukkot together, different times in over the years, but never on a consistent basis. And they always then tend to go back to what they knew growing up and what feels comfortable for them. So I think and then I see a lot more in them of a little bit of a struggle of kind of finding peace and finding balance, because I think they're still kind of dealing with that. I think the thing that myself and my brother did that kind of helped us was we understood, well, we feel like it's the same God. It's just it's a different maybe viewpoint on the history of it and on the name and on the outward expression of it. But God is God. And so we're not praying to Jesus. We're just praying to Hashem, Adonai, whatever name you use. And it was just very seamless for us. And I'm not sure what causes that, but I think part of it is, I know I had a different relationship with my parents. Maybe they say that you have one set of parents and 5 different kids, and you have 5 different sets of parents that parent each child. So I think that my relationship with my parents maybe made it easier for me. But I know that for example, my sister still struggles with it. She still goes back and forth a lot. And she makes challah for her kids and her family. Her husband's not Jewish, but they go to church on Sunday. So she's still really struggling with it. But I think the thing I've told her is that she needs to, as long as she's at peace in her heart with where and what she feels comfortable with, and she's expressing her love for God in whatever way that she feels comfortable right now, that's the first step, to be comfortable and to be at peace, and then to just keep learning and not to take it as a threat to her own existence. It's not. It's just a beautiful addition.
At the beginning, someone asked a question about why is there anti-Semitism, so much anti-Semitism? And I think we know it's on the rise today. Is there anyone who can contribute an answer or an understanding of that? Because I think that is the major thing that has kept people from finding out that they're Jewish, or finding out that their ancestors were Jewish, because people change because of anti-Semitism. Any answers, Dana?
Well, I have a feeling that part of what's going on in the United States today, and I guess it has occurred in other countries as well, is that people are threatened by people who are different. In one of the diversity sessions that I was in, it said that people want their children to be like they are. So it's very important to make sure that you protect your children from other. And I think that here, with this rise of white Christian nationalism in the United States, that the people who have been in control are so afraid of losing power to immigrants, to minorities, to non-Christians, that has resulted in the rise of all this sentiment that was so explicit in Charlottesville. And I mean, since I didn't really connect to my Jewish ancestry, which is, once I had my DNA done, the largest single ancestry that I have, the rest of it is diluted. And coming from lots of men of European heritage, my strongest connection emotionally is to my African-American female ancestors who bore us all under different circumstances.
And any other? Yes, Suzanne.
So thank you for that, Dana. My perspective on why this rise all of a sudden is that it's not all of a sudden at all. that in fact, as we know, the undercurrent of anti-Semitism runs very deep and thousands of years old. So all that's really happening is opportunity for it to resurface. It's percolating up. It's always there. It's always there. Sometimes it's held at bay. Sometimes it seems to be under control. Maybe we go through a period of time where we can take a deep breath. It's just, there's nothing new about any of it.
But
And
what
it's a
is the
big thing.
reason for it?
Because it hasn't yet been addressed, because the people who have these beliefs don't yet know. They just don't know. They don't understand. They're not mature. They're spiritually void of any consciousness about this topic. They're ignorant, uneducated, uninformed, unevolved. There's a lot of ways to describe the people that would have these beliefs. They just don't know. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They don't know.
That may be true today, but historically, why, anti-Semitism goes back thousands of years in one way.
Correct. Why is that?
I could
Why?
speak to that, not from my experience of thousands of years, but I was listening to Netanyahu being interviewed, and the interviewer asked him pointedly, "Why is there anti-Semitism?" And Netanyahu, who's very good at speaking, he said, something happened 2,000 years ago that pointed to the fact that Jews, the killing of Christ was blamed on the Jews.
Right.
Now, that may sound like, but I could tell you, I was overseas in the United States Peace Corps and listening to people with their, it's not anti-Semitism, but as Suzanne pointed out, it's indoctrination. That Jews, you could put any word you want, can't be trusted, are thieves, they own this, they control that. And this is, it's in the body. It's not an intellectual understanding. It's something that, oh, well, he's Jewish. Or it's, we're going to have to live with it. And we're going to have to fight it. And so I think Suzanne pointed out the fighting it means with intelligence, not an eye for an eye, but speaking wisely with dignity about the commonness of us being one, moving in the direction of one with our own senses of identity. What more can we do? I think Dana pointed that out too. Very poignant. So what does it mean to be a Jew? When I was in the Peace Corps, the first person I met, this is a farmer. I was in a remote area. He asked me what religion I am because it was a Catholic country. And I said, I'm Jewish. And he looked at me. He says, you look Jewish. I was the only Jew he's ever seen. So I asked him, I got up the nerve to ask him. I said, what do you mean I look Jewish? He says, well, you look like Christ. Because that's the only white person they know.
Oh gosh. Wow.
But that's the humorous of it. But I don't know, I can't say anything more. There's this part of the stick and this part of the stick. And we have to find where we are on the stick. And it's not an easy stick because it's always wobbling. You can't hear me?
You couldn't hear me. I just thanked you. I thanked Suzanne and Dana for answering that question. Before I take other questions, I want to mention, I think you may have seen when at the start that this session is being recorded and it will be available on the Jewish Genealogical Society of Southwest Florida website. And I'm going to share my screen for a minute to show you that website. And I know that probably the faces will disappear for a minute. We'll see. Let me share that. So we have Jewish Genealogical Society of Southwest Florida. That is on the left. That's what our website looks like. We also have a Facebook page, and that is on the right side of the screen. So you could take down the links from on the top. I'm not going to keep this up long, but I'll give it just a second, just so that you can get the link. So it's the left-hand side, www.jgswf.org, and the right-hand side is www.facebook.com, jgsswf. And neither of these are necessarily active pages. You know, I do announcements on the Facebook page, and we have resources on the Genealogical Society page. I don't know if you can see my pointer, but in the lower left-hand side of the Jewish Genealogical Society webpage, it says, click this box to access the video archive. So this will be a video archive. Okay, I'm stopping that now. And also, I did make a handout for today, and the handout is on my, the handout can be obtained by your emailing me. Actually, I was going to say where it was, but you should email me. And I had my email address up before, but I will say it now because I don't want to take away this screen, but it's Leah Cook, same as my name, no space in between, at AOL.com. So if the handout, I really found a lot of very, very interesting things. It's a 2-page handout. It's all links. And there are about 10 videos that are absolutely fascinating in that handout. So please, you know, let me know. I think I can put my email in chat. So I'm going to try to do that. I'll put that there. I haven't seen any questions in chat that are for the group. But that's,
Leah, I have a question.
who is that?
This is Julian. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay, thank you. All right. You know, I can't see everybody's picture on the same screen. Thank you.
So what is required to become a member of the society? Is it open? Is it you have to be in the research space, or how can one become a member?
Okay, we have our treasurer right here. Liz, do you want to tell everybody what they should do? Is Liz still here?
Yeah, it's all are welcome. It's just filling out an applications primarily so we get your contact information so we can include you on mailings and so forth, but also to give you an opportunity if there are names that you are researching, and then you pay a fee and boom, done.
Love that. That's great. Thank you.
For people who came in late, I'm trying to reach something.
How do we pay the fee?
You just send a check.
And where do we send the check?
We can make that information available. I'm the treasurer. I can put my name and address if you want in the chat, or you can contact Kim, whatever. Why don't I just go ahead? You want me to put my name and address in the chat?
Liz.
It's on the website, isn't it? That I just showed?
Liz, if people go to the website and click on the join link, I'll make sure that's right. Yep, click on the join link. You can then download a PDF with the application. And that also, I think, has your, I'm looking here real quick, that does have your address on it, Liz.
Is it join?
Thanks, Jim. That's the best way. So thank you.
It's just go to www.j, I'll put it up in the chat too, but jgsswf.org and click on join.
And then I'm on the join page now, and it says to download an application, click here.
Yep.
And that's what you see. So you get the application if you do that.
I have a question.
I'm going to unshare my screen so that I can see who's talking.
It's Suzanne.
Suzanne, okay, thank you.
So I just have a question on the Y testing. I don't know if that's what I'm asking for, but that's in my example, that's where my DNA is on my paternal chromosome. What testing am I looking for? What am I going to do next?
Okay, I know about the Y testing. It has to be a male, like Suzanne, you could not do the Y test. And if you want, it would have to be like your father or his son. The Y gene goes down through the male line.
Got it.
And Family Tree DNA is the only website I know of that does the Y test. That's the biggest. And you can get different levels of testing. You know, depending on how much money you want to spend, you can get a lower level and then upgrade to a higher level. I ended up getting the big Y because this guy told me that would give me the most information, but you could start out at a lower level if you wanted to. But it's family.
But I can find out from my DNA, or do I need my father to
no.
do it?
For a Y, you need your father's or his son's, a male lineage. The male, the Y gene goes down through the males. Women have 2 X chromosomes. Males have an X and a Y. So it has to be, if you want to find your Jewish ancestors, it has to be through the Y, a man.
But do you need the male actually to do it? And that's what I'm not clear about. Why would a male have to do it?
The male, it can't be found through a woman's DNA. No, the man has to do it.
Yeah, a woman doesn't have any Y chromosome.
Right, but can a woman just do it using her father's chromosome?
She can be the person who sends the test kit in, but she would have to get the test kit for her father.
So I have a question.
The autosomal test, which any of us can take, goes through both sides back to around 5 or 6 generations. But there are 2 separate tests. The Y male test for that men take can go back thousands of years.
Oh my God.
And then there's a MT mitochondrial test that goes just through the women's line back a long time like that, like the Y. But it's
What's
harder
that
to
called?
find the women because surnames go through the men.
Right. I know
But
that
in
one.
my case, so for me, if I got my brother to get his test done, it would go back to my grandfather and his father and his father, not to my grandmother's father. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, that is correct. Other
So I'm
questions?
kind of stuck.
Other questions?
So if I were to get my DNA, it would not show anything? Because I'm
If you got an autosomal test, which like Ancestry, it shows both sides, maybe back to 5 or 6 generations. But if you want to find your which line did your Jewish ancestry come through, your mother or your father?
Mother.
Your mother. Okay. That's an mtDNA test.
Okay, thank you.
Others, any other questions? I want to thank all of you. This has just been really incredible. I so much wish that we were meeting in person instead of over a computer, but I think we've really gotten to know each other and we've really learned a lot. I think I would like to turn this back to Kim. Do you want, or Howard, to mention our upcoming programs again? Thank you, everyone. Kim?
Well,
Thank you.
first of all, yeah, I definitely want to thank you, Leah, for this idea and for getting such amazing speakers and for all those who just spoke up today without really being on the panel. I wanted to thank everybody. Now, is Howard still here? Or if not, I can give the upcoming programs. Howard, are you still here? Well, he may not be. Well, on December 18th, we're going to be meeting on Zoom again. It's a Sunday. We're meeting at 1 o'clock. The program will be Publishing Your Family's History, How I Learned to Stop Waiting Until I Was Finished and started being a messenger for generations to come. So that's what we're going to have. And the presenter will be Barry Halpern.
And then I'll mention some of the others. In January, Adam Brown, who's with the Avitano DNA Project. These are, Kim, are these on the website, the future speakers?
Yes, if you look on the fall newsletter on the website, you'll see the details of all the upcoming programs that we have scheduled. And we decided to meet all of our meetings for this season on Zoom.
I'm going to put out a request to everybody. We have been meeting on Zoom, of course, because of COVID. And we were meeting at, I can't think of the name. Aviva for the past couple of years. And Aviva is a home for older people. It's rehab and home for older people, and I guess independent and assisted living. But because of COVID, we really still can't go to that location. But if anybody knows of a location, and we're not used to paying, I guess, if anyone knows of a location that we might be able to use in the future for in-person meetings, please let Kim know. And you could just email her at the same email address that you got the link from. Okay, Kim, do you want to wind things up? And
Well,
again,
no,
thank you to everyone.
Yeah, just a big thank you. If anybody just wants to stay on a little bit and chit chat just for a few more minutes, that's fine. For those of you who have to leave, thank you for coming.